Why the hell am I not getting? Well, hello everybody. This is Jeff Colson, Junior Hockey Live, Wednesday night. Got to make sure we bring in the trusted bloomer. There he is. Look at you. Oh man, I got glare coming in from screens in my
Yeah, you
background. I don't like that, man. I don't like that. You talk. I'm gonna put you on solo. You introduce us because I'm gonna fix that glare. I hate it.
do. Well, thanks for everyone that has joined. I know that we're a little bit earlier than we have been the last few weeks. So thanks for hanging in there with us as we've kind of moved around with the schedule. But we got a couple topics here that we wanted to talk about today. Um, there's been quite a few different prospect events or all-star games and things like that we want to talk about. And then we're just going to kind of go around some of the leagues and look at some of the top players from last year, top scorers, and just kind of track where they're at today. So that's kind of the plan. Obviously, we'll ask you guys to live chat us and give us some feedback on your end, some questions that you're wondering, and we'll be glad to answer those. But we do have a couple things that we definitely are going to go through before that. So again, my name is Mike Bloom. This is Jeff Colson. He's the voice, the face, and all that it is of Junior Hockey Live.
You try. You try to flatter me. You must do better. You must work on that. I need more
Well,
flattery. All right, man. So we got a lot of things to talk about and get
we
rolling
do.
with. Just a little background on us. Okay. I gotta. We gotta clear this up because this was something that came up the other night, and titles, job titles. So I've been calling myself the director of player development since I've been with Lone Star for 2 years now. On my Elite Prospects page, it says Director of Player Development. And so I don't really go to the Lone Star page much, but Mike does because he has nothing better to do than to, basically creep on his own team's page. So he called me out the other day. I 50% of the places I have one title, and 50% of the places I have another title. And darn it, I brought one of my business cards down purposely to show you guys what the business card says. And of course now I don't know where I sat it because I don't usually carry my business cards down into the studio. I guess it's still a controversy. Mike says it's not. Mike says it's completely that I am the director of player or associate director or assistant director of or something with player personnel,
Yes.
and that he's technically my boss, which is true. This gentleman right here is technically my boss. Don't let him know that though, because then it would change our whole relationship and the dynamics of our relationship.
But our the controversy though was not me saying that I'm your boss
I
or
knew you'd say
whatnot.
that. That's why I said
The
it that way.
controversy was you calling yourself a director of player development rather than player personnel. And that's what I think you had a couple questions from people wanting to know what somebody that was a director of player development actually does.
So here's
Because
what I think happened.
you think I live chatted it?
No, I think what happened was when I first hired in, they hired me in the title that was discussed and the title that was agreed upon was Director of Player Development. And I think somewhere along the line, because when we were getting it all put on the team page, I didn't control that narrative, and somebody to my left controlled that narrative, and
Nope.
that
Nope.
way I forget when we're on camera. It's that way. I think you inadvertently just put it there without knowing, and it set up that way.
No.
I think that's what happened.
If you were going to be a co-director of player development, there would be no other person in player development other than you.
I'm telling you that
I
I
was the only. Player
I,
personnel was all I've ever
so I've
been.
got to call in. I got to call into the top guns. I got to call into the owner number two, the GM. We're going to get to the bottom of this, and we're going to figure out what my true title is, because I'm not one big. You know me. I'm not big on the title anyway. I don't use it when I'm out talking to players. I don't flaunt the title, nor do you. I'm not saying you do, but it would be nice. There's different teams that have my exact position is the director of player development or it's director of player personnel. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but since you brought it up and made it a controversy, I got to kind of address it here. My my whole being is riding on what I get called. I mean, now I don't know. I walk upstairs and talk to my family. I don't know the right title. It's like my identity might be ripped away from me. I built
Yeah.
my identity on being the director of player development now for a couple of years. And if that gets taken away from me, man, oh man, it's just going to go downhill, man, way downhill.
I think to be a part of player development, you actually have to develop the players, which typically is on the ice.
Yada
And
yada. No, 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 no,
yeah,
no, 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 no.
yes, yes,
There are player development guys that get on the ice, but they're normally not within the structure of a team. Player development guys just mean that they are involved with the player's ascension up the ladder. And there is no definition of any of this stuff anyway. You can't find a definition of it except for here. Maybe we just start. Maybe that's part of our role in life now, is to clarify and define all of hockey's. What is a general manager? What is a associate head coach versus a head coach and assistant head coach? And because now you can be an assistant coach, you can be an assistant to the head coach, you can be an associate head coach, you can be a co-head coach. There's so many titles out there. What's the difference? I don't know. So way to wake. Now this might landslide into something big of just complete upheaval of hockey and chaos developed because you had to define my role and my title.
Well, here's the funny thing is people started asking questions on what you did within your role because it was unclear with the way that you called yourself. So, hey,
Hey,
if you want
unclear.
confusion out there, keep it out there.
You can call me anything in my role is unclear. Okay.
That's true.
I don't know what I do from day to day, so that doesn't really help anybody. Maybe we should have a contest to give me a role and define my role and what I should do on a day to day basis. Maybe that would help.
I think you'll still be confused after that.
Well, we got to give credit where credit's due because our man Frank jumped on and was one of the ones that caused part of this chaos. Frank, not happy with you. Boomer's happier than hell, but I'm not happy right now. So, all right, Booms, where are we going to start?
Well, let's start with there were two top prospect events that happened in one in the North American League, the other one in the NA3. They both were in the Pittsburgh area. For those that aren't familiar with these events, they're kind of perceived as all-star selections and all-star weekend, but they'll take teams from they'll take a team based on like Team South, and all the different teams in the South Division will have top players from their team go to this event and play on that team. And then, the Central and the East, and, every division is going to have a team made up of their top players. Same thing happens in the NA3. And what it really is obviously showcasing these different players to all these different college teams and college scouts and recruiters and things like that. They do have a presence of NHL scouts and recruiters there also, but the biggest, I think, difference between maybe what the USHL does and even the OHL and the WHL and all the other all-star type events that they put together, in most cases, these players are not committed yet. So
Right.
this is a really good opportunity for these players that are typically in their last year of junior hockey, have the ability to play in that many, like in an event that has that many college scouts there, just looking at those four teams or those six teams, depending on which league we're talking about. And I think there was probably less than five, maybe five total kids in the whole event that had already been committed before. So this really is an opportunity for these players to play against other really good competition, have these colleges start talking
Yep.
to them. Maybe they have been talking to them already, and now they can talk more in person about an actual commitment. I've already seen one, maybe two. I haven't been online all that much today to see how many commitments have come from kids in that event, but I did see the Anderchuk kid commit to Yale today. He was at the event. He was uncommitted beforehand. So, this is where you're going to see over the next probably month or so more of the kids that were in this event start committing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely. It's
the one other thing
Go ahead.
before you jump in that I really like about how they do it is because the NA is so division specific with the games that they play. It's kind of cool that these guys have been knocking the snot out of each other all year round, just playing teams within their division. And now for an event like this, they all get put on the same team and they represent their division. So then there becomes a little bit of a rivalry to say, we're a South Division team and we want to be the best division. So, there's a competition when they play the Central. There's competition
Right.
when these, two different divisions are playing against each other. That's kind of a cool little wrinkle that they finally get to play alongside of each other rather than constantly against each other.
Yeah, it definitely is an interesting wrinkle that they put on things. And, just a couple of weeks ago, I blasted the USHL event. In fact, you brought it up to me today and said, "Oh, you can't be positive towards this event. You said that you don't like these events." When I was negative or slightly negative towards the USHL event, and I said, "Look, the USHL, these players are all known. These players are high exposure. They're already ranked, 6 ways to Sunday, meaning the top at what they put out to their event. Now their event is showcasing to the NHL." A little bit different than this event because these players, don't get me wrong, there are some uncommitteds, but they're usually intentionally uncommitteds, and there'll be lots of college coaches there too. But the difference between the two events, and the reason why I'm positive towards this event, and I sound like such a homer, and you put me in the spot to sound like a homer bloomer. I don't want to sound like a homer because I work in the North American Hockey League, but there's a difference between these two events. I think it's a waste of money in the USHL. I said it last week. Not going to back off of that. I don't think there's any intent for us to do that except for the fact, and here's the big reason, is that the USHL gets about $1 million a year from the NHL for development. So, okay, you got to appease the boss. Got to put some time into it, and a lot of that money goes back into this event. So, okay, NHL gets what they paid for it. They get an event so they can showcase. That's fine, no problem. Still don't think it's very money well spent. These players are highly exposed, easy to see, easy accessible. The NAHL is different. 29 teams. You're talking everything from Texas, Louisiana. You go into Iowa. You're in North Dakota or South Dakota. You're in Minnesota, then you go to the East Coast and you're in the Jerseys and the Boston area. That's a big square. It's not the same product because it covers so much more area, so many more teams. The other reason I like this event is, first of all, it's highly scouted. You're going to get people there at that event. They're smart enough to put it on is it Sunday, Monday, or Monday, Tuesday? I think it's a Monday, Tuesday event.
Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah, Monday, Tuesday event. And I've been to it numerous times. The pandemic kind of, threw everybody for a loop on, what events they go to and they don't go to. But the reason why I think this is a important event for NAHL players is, this is their one chance to get looked at by the by the NHL. The NHL will have 8 or 10 people there, maybe 12 people there from different teams, individual teams. I don't know if there's a central scouting guy there from the league. A lot of times they're there because of goaltending. That's the NAHL kicks out a lot of goalies. The NHL watches a lot of NAHL goalies, and there's players in the NHL right now, goalie wise, that started in the NAHL a few years ago. But first of all, you go to this event, and there's always the fans that sit on one end, and I know I've said this before. How do you tell a scout from the NHL on down? How do you tell a coach, Division I coach from the NHL down when they're at games? Black coat, black pants, black shoes. It's like what's that Australian team, the All Blacks?
Yeah.
they sit in a section of the stands that's probably can fit 150 people, and there's about 100 of them there because there's D1, D3, there's NHL, there's all these different places. But it's like somebody called up and said, "Hey, what are you wearing today?" "I'm wearing black and black and black." "Oh, I'll wear that too." And they all show up wearing. Nobody wears khakis. Nobody wears a yellow coat or a blue coat or anything flashy. It's just black on black on black. Now I tend to wear a black coat, but I tend to also wear a pair of green slacks or a pair of dark green khakis or a pair of khakis. And sometimes I wear different shoes than black shoes. You go in and you sit down in the break room, and it's like, who's that guy? Why would he be in there? Look at his shoes. He doesn't have black track shoes on or black dress shoes on. And it's just hilarious. I don't know where this habit started from, but I'm always waiting for the whole group to stand up and start doing that all black stuff where, but anyway. I like the event. Here's the biggest reason I like this event, though. That's what I was getting to. And, of course, I get off track. That's okay. I like the fact that if you just look at the South, who did very well, you got guys like Hunter Hastings. Hunter Hastings plays for New Mexico. I believe he was a BCHL guy before he came to New Mexico. You're the deep stat guy in individual players.
I know. Normally I'm good with this, but for him specifically, I honestly can't recall, so I don't want to say one way or the other.
Anyway, Hunter scores a goal, and it was a nice goal. You get guys like Mara at Lone Star, the program that we may or may not be affiliated with, but he pops 2. Did he get 2?
I know he had 4 points. He led him and Ryan, Mansfield from Odessa. They led the whole weekend with 4 points.
Okay, so there's another great example. Here's an Odessa kid, and my logic on how things are scouted and how things progress. Your top programs aren't looking at Odessa because when they go, "Hey, I got some time to watch a NAHL game," there's Lone Star, and who's on top right now besides Lone Star? Oklahoma. Here's Shreveport, New Mexico. There's your top 4 right here. I think that's close to what the top 4 is. I'm doing this off the top of my head. Oh, they all have games this weekend, and, hey, number 1's playing number 3. That'll be a good matchup. Or do they go, "Hey, look at this. I'm going to go watch that number 8 play number 7. It doesn't work that way. So when an Odessa guy gets a chance to flourish at one of these events, that's huge for that program. That's huge for that player, and he gets an exposure that he may not get. Maybe, Odessa is not having a great year. We know that. And they've been kind of, in a, I wouldn't say they're in a tailspin. They just haven't been able to get traction over the last couple of years. And, it's hard in the South to get traction because you got, not only the hey, look, nobody thought New Mexico was going to come in and be what they are. I don't think anybody guessed that, New Mexico, because they had a small rink, they got a great owner that we know that now. But when New Mexico first came in, it was kind of like, all right, now we got to go play New Mexico. That's the way the South looked at it. Now playing New Mexico is a big deal. They play it. They think their elevation is higher than Denver, so they're a mile-high team. You go in there. If you don't go in there a day or two early, you're just gassed before the warm-ups are over, and you're going to feel that way the whole game. You might acclimate by the second game, but maybe not. And so they got a distinct advantage. They're a good, strong team. And what my point is to move up in the South of all divisions is incredibly hard. You've got long-standing coaches. There's not a lot of turnover in the great programs. Your Mudbugs, your Brahmas, all those teams, their coaches have been established and their management has been established for years. And they've got it kind of down to an art on how they sequence through the year. And they always end up being on the top of the league by the end of the year. Shreveport was, in the first half of the year, they were bottom dweller. And just like Shreveport normally does, they move up. Now, my point is all these guys in the South that don't get the same exposure as the East does, we know that. It's easy to go see an East game because all the Division I programs are there. So the South guys get out there and they get a chance to flourish. And the one game, didn't they throw up 7 points in a game? 7 goals in a game. What happens here is, too, that tends to be the most disciplined league as far as systems go. And I'll tell you right now, the guy that got 4 points with us doesn't get 4 points in 4 games, doesn't get 4 points in 5 or 6 games usually during the year because they play a different system, they play a different style. They're not this team that puts up a lot of points. You look at the New Mexico program, what? Tight, 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 tight. Crank down the D, and they're not worried about running up points. They're not running gun teams, so these teams don't throw up a lot of points. And that's evidence just by looking at the league and looking at the stats. If I go to the standings on and I look at the divisions, goals for in the Central for the top team is Austin, and they've got 133 goals for. East, 148 top team. Midwest, 116. Now you go down and you look at the top team, which is Oklahoma. That's a newer team, and it's got 173. So you say, oh, wow, they're crushing it. Now look at the rest. 109, 118, 107, 74. The drop-off in the South is for goal production is pretty substantive. One team on top, and that team's really good this year. That's Oklahoma. But that's not a normal situation. You don't normally have a team that just crushes it and puts up numbers like that. And my only point there is, these other teams, these Lone Stars, New Mexico, Odessa, who's their total output for the year is 111. Lone Stars in second place with 109, okay, versus the 173 that Oklahoma throws up. This is a defensive division for the most part, with one exception. The rest of these teams are buckled down teams. So these kids get a chance to go out there and they get a chance to let their hair down a little bit. It's not a bad thing. And it's nothing against the South because you're going to see the same thing in college. You're going to find teams that just buckle down and rather win 1-0, 2-1 versus winning 6-4. And that's perfectly okay. That's a style. It's the way it is in basketball. It's the way it is in college football. There's teams that would rather win, 7-3 or 14-7 than they would 56-51, and so these kids get a chance. They get a chance to go out there and actually unleash the beast a little bit, maybe play a little bit more free. The coaches on the bench aren't requiring them to stay in a certain system. They're not trying to get them to stay within the team system. They're just going, have fun. And it's evidence when these kids go out there and put up those kind of numbers. And that's also a plug for these different divisions to say, hey, look, there are goal scorers here, but they might be in a system that doesn't allow them to jump out as much. So this is a good event as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's a good point, too, when you talk about just the lack of scoring in the South is not a product of the ability of the players that are playing on those different teams. It's just the coaching, the structure. There's less space. It's just more difficult to produce points because it's not a wide open, free flowing style of play with both teams.
Right.
So, again, when you take some of those kids and you let them just kind of, go out there and wheel in an all-star type event, like you said, for the North American League Top Prospects, the South team ended up winning all of their games. And, there's no real champion, but, they're considered the champion of that event. And then when you look at the NA3, the exact same thing happened. The South team was the team that went undefeated and, are typically coined the champions of that event. But they're also similar. It's a heavier, it's a little bit more of a tight coached style of division. But this is where, when they get into these events, some of the colleges that are looking to see some of these kids pop out offensively, they can see that because now – the reins are taken off them a little bit and they're allowed to show more of their actual skill level or their talent rather
Amen.
than just playing within a system.
You're preaching, man. You're preaching. Keep it
That's
up.
right.
I love this.
That's
okay,
right.
Listen. As usual, we talked and did a pre-production meeting to talk about what we're going to discuss tonight, and I got rolling on some comment in some area, and I said, make sure you write this down. I want to make sure we get back to this. So you've got to lead me down the road here a little bit because I was on playing stats and looking at things. The hell were we talking about?
Well, you were talking about just understanding where some of the old ones that were playing last year in the North American League or some of the other leagues that we looked at. And we looked at who the top scorer was last year that was an 0-1 and just kind of tracked, where he's at now in college and how he's
Yeah,
producing. And then we
yeah.
took,
So
example of somebody that's kind of in the middle of the pack scoring.
yeah, so every league has a fictional set of boundaries on it, and when I say fictional, because there's even in the NHL, there's always the anomaly. The NHL, the paths are pretty clear statistically where the flows come from. We know that. NHL players, where they drafted from, they're drafted from the USHL. They're drafted from the three majors in the Canadian major leagues. That's going to give you the vast majority of where all of them are. Now, there's a European contingent that's about 25% that you can throw into that NHL draft too. But we all know the flows. They're all fairly consistent. And we know if you back channel those and do a little bit of reverse engineering, you can follow the flow back to the next level. What feeds the USHL, what feeds the OHL, what feeds the WHL. And we can watch that. And the trends statistically all point the same directions. And we know that. We know what feeds the USHL. The USHL is fed a third by prep, a third by Tier 1 Elite, and a third by Minnesota high school hockey. We all know that. And so I don't want to say that these are stiff parameters on each league, and I'll talk about what I mean by these parameters. I want everybody to know that of course there's going to be an anomaly. The next time I hear somebody go, you don't have to worry about where you play because they'll find you, because Bob Benzinger back in 1967 in the NHL was playing house in his boots because he couldn't afford skates all the way up until he was 19. Okay, yes, there's going to be that guy that played house and he couldn't even afford skates. He had to strap duct tape blades on the bottom of his snow boots because he couldn't afford skates. Yes, we know that. He had a straight stick because his dad had to carve it off a tree. We get that. Okay, there's going to be that one guy. There's always that guy that somebody can point to. But I don't want to base my son or daughter's hockey career on the one anomaly out there that made it. I would much rather know that the path that I'm on has put 80% or 90% of the players into the next level versus trying to be the anomaly. So every time you start to open up and yap, whoever the yappers are, you think about it. Do you want to really prove your point by saying, oh, yeah, they'll find you? Look at, my cousin Benny had an uncle that had a nephew that knew a neighbor that made it all the way to the world championships in juniors, and he never played hockey before. Okay, whatever. You know my point. And I'm not killing this point, because throw that aside. Look at the stats. The parameters are about the same on all the leagues. What I mean by parameters are the top end of the NA3 is they're going to put a small percentage of players into the NAHL, and the rest are going to stay at the NA3 level as far as progression. You might see a little percentage move over to one of the other Tier 3 leagues, but it's pretty much progressed to that level. When you look at the EHL, majority of players in the EHL stay in the EHL. We know that. There's a small percentage that will move to the NA, and a small percentage that will go to the NCDC, but it's not a flow that's a statistically positive path where you go, hey, just play here, it'll get you there. Okay? So we know if the EHL has a top-end bandwidth and a bottom-end bandwidth, and the NAHL has them, we can kind of project and look at these a little bit and get statistical information. And that's all I was saying. And if I go and pull up, that make any sense at all?
Yes, it did. It just was 20 minutes of that.
It was not 20. We've only been on the air now for 29 minutes, and I know that your diatribe at the beginning took at least 14 minutes. So quit making me look like the bad guy. Let's just start out with the EHL. All I want to do is pull up the EHL as a league, and I'm going to do this so that everybody can see this. Hey, did you notice the name of the player is different now? It doesn't always show up as Norneen, who is like a 35-year-old guy. Okay, so here's the EHL. Do you understand what I was talking about there when I just said?
I do, yes.
Okay.
You need verification on every point you make. Yes.
Well, you're not saying anything. You just got this look on your face tonight. Oh, the other night when I was on by myself, I started counting the times I said and and if it was a drinking game, there would be no sober people listening whatsoever. It was horrible, man. It was horrible. I don't know. I just think I was tired, and because I normally don't do a lot of that. Okay, so I want to go to the 21-22 season. I'll expand this up so you guys can see it. And all I want to do here is I want to come down here and I want to put in the sort, I just want to put 2001 in the birth year. So this is EHL players. This is last year's, the kids that graduated out of last year. And this is top to bottom forwards as far as points, these forwards and Ds. Okay, so, and I think we pulled this up we pulled Colin up on top here. Colin Bella had an unbelievable year last year, 01 from Connecticut. And he played 3 years EHL. He's playing at Lake Forest. So we're talking about an unbelievable year. Good player, solid player across the board. Nothing negative to say about Colin and his efforts last year. He's playing Division III hockey as the best player coming out of the EHL. Arguably the best. When I say the best, it's hard to say who's exactly the best just because you're leading in the points. But as I go down here and randomly throw a number out to me, throw a number 1 to 1. What's that?
How far down you want to go?
Top 15.
Pick the 13th best guy.
Don't know the name. So Matt Zandowick, it sounds like his name is. He's from New Jersey. He is playing at UMass Dartmouth. Good school. But we're talking about the top players coming out of the EHL. So that bandwidth, the ceiling on this is D3. And I could keep doing this and keep going. It's going to show up the same way across the board. Meaning, even if I'm the best in my last year in the EHL, the odds of me going and playing D1 are very, very slim. We knew this before I said this, but this is ways to verify it, to say, hey, we can listen to these two clowns, or we could actually put up some stats to prove this point. Now, so let's look at the bottom. Go ahead.
And where this comes into play most specifically is if you're somebody that's playing, let's say you're playing for the NA3, and you try to get an opportunity to play in the North American League, and maybe it just doesn't work out. So sometimes kids will think like, you know what, instead of staying and playing, where I'm currently at, I'm going to go to the EHL, or I'm going to go to, the NCDC or whatever they say, because I want the opportunity to play in the North American League. Well, if the top players in this level are still not moving over to that league, that should be a part of your homework to figure out, okay, if I actually did make that move, is that really going to help me get to where my goal is? And in this case, we're not saying that any of these top scorers from the EHL, they're only playing Division III. If you play in the EHL, you're going to end up getting a pretty good opportunity to play in the division, like D3.
You're playing NCAA hockey. Yeah.
Right, which is great. But that's what the kids in that league, that's what they're trying to get out of it. That's why they're playing there.
Right.
So, that's kind of the point of all this is that, even when you're the top scorer, that player is not going on to D1. He's also not going on to the North American League if he was a year younger. Like, that's the anomaly. If there is someone that's able to do that, there's not someone every single year. There's not multiple players every single year.
There's no trend. There's no trend to D1. Yes, there's been EHL guys that have been offered D1 and have gone on and become productive players at that level, but that's not the norm. You just don't see it. I can show you another way, and the same thing is, all we have to do is go over and look at College Hockey Inc., which we've done before. And hopefully these are sites that if you're looking to learn about this, or you're looking for your player to know more about this, these are the sites you need to know. If I go to College Hockey Inc., go on the right, go to recruiting, and then go to commitments, it pulls up a league of commitments. Okay, so here's my list of all the commitments across the board. Now, there's only one league I forgot. I was going to say, because remember the other day I said, oh, wow, they're putting D3 up now? They were mixing in D3s with this. That's not really the case. That's D3. I'm sorry, folks. This isn't what I thought it was. This will give you all your D1 commitments for the last season and a half. Kids that are going into college. It's still a great thing, but the nice feature of what I was going to show you is it gives you the current team. So you can see here's the USA National Development Program, and then they give you USHL. They go from USHL, a lot of kids with commitments there. North American Hockey League, A lot of kids committed there. British, this is the BCHL, British Columbia. I was going to say Britain, British Columbia Hockey League. How come it sounds like the state of the Union? I'm now just my words just aren't coming out right now. Does that give away my political affiliation at all?
Who knows?
Okay, AJHL, the same thing. Now, while we're here, I want to show you this. Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Ontario. Everything we say kind of proves out. Is the SJHL a good league? Of course it is. As far as production to the next level, there is some. It's not the same as the NAHL. It's not the same as the BCHL. Manitoba, about the same as Saskatchewan. You know, the OJHL, a little bit better. And the C, this is the funny one, is the CCHL. It doesn't look good because, remember, this is the last team that the kid is currently playing for. This is the current roster. So a lot of kids in this league, young, that especially the Americans, will move on to the NAHL, and so they'll show up as NAHL players even though they had a background in the CCHL. But look here. Now all of a sudden it looks like the USPHL. Wow. Look at all their numbers. But then we go over and look at the colleges. This is the only league that publishes their D3 players onto this list. D3, 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 D1, D1, D3, D1, D3, D1, 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 D3, D3, you know, arguably D2, depending on how you want to classify, D3, D3, D1, D3. So there's only a few D1s on that list. They average usually about 10 a year. But if you look at this list, for whatever reason, they decided to start marketing their D3 players on a list with every other school except for the USPHL. Now they put Premier on here too. Premier never showed up on this list. Why? Because look at all this. That's all D3 schools across the board. So now it looks like the USPHL is on the same ground as all these other leagues, that they're playing at the same level, and it's not true at all. So, but that's not the point I was making. While we were there, I just thought we would throw that in there. The point I was making is that, you know, if you're going to play in a league, you just got to know where the parameters are. If I'm playing in the USPHL, you know, I'm going to be USPHL Premier for the most part is going to get you into, the majority of the players are going to go into the bottom third of D3 hockey, Division III NCAA Division III hockey. Nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but that's the parameters. If I go into the NCDC, very few players are going to move on to Division I, a handful, and the rest are going to go to mid to top level D3 programs. If I'm playing in the NAHL, my parameters are a little different. My parameters are, I can leave as a senior, a last year age out player. I can leave and I can go play Division I, Division III, and if I wanted to, I could play ACHA College Club. The limit is not on that league. If I go and play in the EHL, I just walk through that, and if I play in the NA3HL, the NA3HL is going to have because it's built structurally to put kids into the NAHL. There's going to be a window to the NAHL. But you're not going to see NA3HL players go to the BCHL, and you're not going to see them go to, you might see a couple go to the NCDC, but not, there's going to be a statistical anomaly. But here's the thing. Keep in mind, EHL, NCDC, NA3, and Premier. You'll also see on the bottom third of that list, kids that just age out and are done. They don't progress. So you won't see that in the USHL, except for the anomaly. You won't see it in the NAHL or the BCHL, except for the anomaly. You know, somebody says, I'm done. And usually they're done for other reasons other than the want to play at the next level. It's, you know, injury. It's certain academic needs where they like, hey, I want to be a, you know, biochemist, and the only school that offers it's here. I'm not going to jeopardize the fact that I got into. I had a player that had lots of offers. This a few years ago. Had lots of offers. I was trying to help them get into a school that was a really good fit for being a high academic school and to be a really, really good college for hockey. The player had a very specific engineering degree that had to do with software. Yeah, I mean, it was right down to like, I am going to get a degree in this, and then I'm going to go to work for Google. I mean, that's the way they already had it all planned out, which, by the way, is the way it went. Every school that did not have that specific degree program offered. I had one school, the president of the school, the coach, and the dean of whatever college got on the phone and says, we don't have that specific degree, but we'll build a degree program for you so you can get all those classes you need, and it'll be an independent studies degree or something, but we'll give you all the same things and we'll make sure it fits for you. Nope. And so the player went off and did their degree and played club hockey and was an elite player, could have played pretty much anywhere. Those are the anomalies. Those are the kids that I'm not talking about. So the bottom line is there's parameters on these teams, and as a parent, you need to know that. You need to know there's parameters and that things you can't get to certain places from certain teams and certain leagues. Why didn't I just say that in the beginning?
That would have saved some time for sure.
Okay.
But
I'll just sit here quiet now, and you just talk about whatever you want now.
well, just to kind of circle back to what you were saying, in every league, there's layers of what the opportunity becomes. The USHL, the US development kids, all doors are open for them. Any opportunity from a D1 standpoint, for the most part, is open for them. And then as you get into some of the top players that aren't playing in the U.S. development program that are in the USHL, again,
Yep.
the top D1 schools are still available to them. The North Dakotas, the Michigans, the Notre Dames, the Boston colleges, they're all available. As you get further down that USHL roster, D1 is still available to them, but some of those top schools aren't really knocking on their door. So that's when, the Western Michigans, the Bowling Greens, the Miami of Ohio's, like the Colorado colleges, like those are still opportunities for them. And then the same thing happens when you move down to the North American League. You're going to have D1 opportunities for all of these different players for the most part, but you're not getting the Denvers and the North Dakotas and the BC type opportunities like you get in the USHL. So then there's just levels of the expectation that you need to have as a player when you are in these different spots. So, you can't go into a NAHL type team and think, I want to play for the University of Michigan, because the track record of kids coming from the NAHL and going to the University of Michigan is so small, if it ever even happens anymore. So that's just kind of the point. And, I know when we've talked through this before, you actually pulled up the null and went in and we looked at the top score that was an 0-1 last year and where they're playing and what their success is. And then we took another kid that was a little bit more of the middle of the pack, and again, just kind of following their path. And, there's some roadblocks or some spots that these kids were in that people could say, well, this is a dead end for you. And they found ways to maneuver themselves into better situations and take advantage of those situations, and then got good opportunities from it.
Okay.
That would have been good examples to show on the podcast rather than to you and me.
Okay. Beverly says it's game night, and I'm not going to put this on because I get tricked sometimes with these game streams where they put the stream in, and it's actually an advertisement for a paid streaming service to watch hockey. But if there is a big game you want to talk about, Beverly, please let us know. Frank asked the question, how can you get an invite to a NAHL team this summer? Might give that 30 seconds because we do cover that mostly on Monday night, but give him an answer on that one.
Yeah, I mean, for us personally, we're watching kids throughout, this whole season. There's certain kids we'll be talking to about tender opportunities. We'll be talking about possibly drafting them. but in most cases, we want them coming to our camps. So we're going to be reaching out to a lot of kids to try to get them to our camps to see how they all work, with each other and against each other. So for the most part, if you're playing AAA hockey, you're probably going to get invites from a series of different programs. Some of these NAHL teams are partnering together, so there'll be like 2 or sometimes even 4 that will host an event together, and their staff will be reaching out to different, AAA coaches and different kids that they have information on that they want to see at those camps. So,
And what does that demystify? What does that it just crushes the bad press about pre-draft camps when there's 4 teams that are sharing a camp? 4 teams sharing a camp, you're not making money. Okay, you're there because if there's a profit, you're dividing it by 4, and usually one team takes the lead on getting the ice and doing all the background work. So it's probably even less of a little bit of money if there's money that's made, because these camps don't always make money. You project them to be full, you budget for them to be less than full, and when you're with 4 teams, full or not, the teams are there because they're looking for players. That's the bottom line. They're not doing it because it's a profit margin. If I'm going to split the money 4 ways, and I got to drive from, my place in New York to let's say Iowa for the camp or Detroit for the camp, and I got to bring my staff into that camp and get hotel rooms, and it just, if you think this is just a moneymaker, once again, we're not the broadcast for you. That's we don't believe that. Yes, there are teams out there that do it, that make a profit off it. Got horror story after horror story. The bottom line is, Frank, if nobody's reaching out to you, email teams. Send out emails to the teams themselves. Pick the teams you like, and do your homework on who has openings for the next year. If I'm a goalie and I see that a team's got 2 young goalies on the staff already or on the team already, maybe go to the next team. If I'm a defenseman, same thing. If I see that they've got 5 of their 6 defensemen returning, might not be the team I want to put my efforts into. Maybe I'm looking for a team that's got 3 or 4 openings for next year. So that's the way I'd go about it.
The other thing I'll say too that I don't think people fully understand or realize is that an NA team cannot host a pre-draft camp until the season in the Robertson Cup champion has been awarded. So they can't host one until that happens. And then they pretty much only have until the draft. So depending on how long the playoffs go, typically there's about 3 weeks, sometimes 4 weeks, where all of these pre-draft camps can happen. So if you think there's 29, 30 teams in the league and they all are trying to host these camps, you could have a weekend where there's, 12 teams having a camp on the same weekend. So that's taking all of these players and you're splitting them across 12 different teams and events. That's really difficult to try to fill the camp with the right type of caliber player, which is why a lot of these teams are jumping in together, because there's just not enough available weekends to have camps across the board at all these programs and fill them with the right caliber of player.
I'm going to help you there. Now, every time I say 30 seconds, you got a clock on, you can just look right there and it'll help you. Now you can see how long it takes you to speak for 30 seconds.
Does
okay, Julie.
Julie. Put it on you, count up?
No, there's only one person that controls the clock. See, Junie wants to know, and I'll take this one. Does the NAHL scout, what I'm going to try to do? There we go. I'll put that right there. How's that? Does the NAHL scout BCHL players? Yes and no. Yes, of course we do, but in different ways than you think. First of all, most of the guys in the BCHL came up through different organizations. They either came up through prep, they came up through Tier 1 Elite, Minnesota High School, whatever, before they got to the BCHL. So most of these guys were on our radar directly or indirectly before they got to the BCHL. Now, American players in the BCHL are near and dear to the NAHL. We all watch those teams, and we watch to see if players are struggling, if they're not in the lineup, if they're jumping in and out of the lineup, if they're not putting up the numbers we would expect them to put up there. we're just looking and listening. Our ears to the ground. How is the ear to the ground? We know coaches that know coaches. We know advisors. We talk to these guys. If we find out that so and so is not happy and might leave, of course we're scouting these guys and watching for those situations. We're watching all Canadian CJHL and BCHL teams just for that reason. If a guy's not in a situation that makes it productive and positive for him, sometimes it's just too far away from home. If I'm from Kansas or if I'm from Illinois, going to play in Texas or going to play in Minnesota in the NAHL isn't that big of a deal. As far as distance, your parents can still get to see. If I'm in the BCHL or the AJ, if I'm in Saskatchewan, sometimes it makes it a little bit more difficult to get up there and see players play just because of the distance and the where the team's located. So yes, we do watch those leagues, but in a different way than you would expect. We're not sending a staff up to watch BCHL games. We don't have a scout watching BCHL games. Like I said, many of the people in our organization, and like the other NAHL organizations, know these players already. We don't really need to affirm players that are in the BCHL because we've got an idea. Now, some of them, have a bad year, and they're not. It's not an interest to players or to teams in the NAHL because maybe the attitude changed, maybe the work ethic changed. So many things come into play with young players at that age. I talk about it all the time. What gets in the way of a good hockey career? Booze, broads, and big ass cars. Okay, those are the things that get in the way. You start driving, things change. You start dating, things change. And you find out that there's a party life out there. Those things all get in the way of everybody, not just athletes. They get in the way of every a teenage kid out there. You could also throw jobs into that category, but not with this younger generation. They don't work. By gosh, they don't have that same work ethic that our generations have. So, but that's it. Yes, we do watch that. Hey, look, Facebook user says, great job, guys. Love the information. Love that. Okay, here's one for you. Troy wants to know, please remind me of when your shows are during the week. Mike?
Junior Hockey Live is Wednesday nights, and Junior Hockey Advisors is the Ask Me Anything is Monday night.
Monday night we talk about the progress of going from league to league and, from 16s to 18s, 18s to prep to juniors, and we talk about how everything leads back to juniors and how that moves on to college hockey. We'll talk about the progression all the way across with any level, and we'll talk about those kind of details there. So, yeah, Monday and Wednesday, they're always archived at Junior Hockey Advisor YouTube. Please subscribe there. We're desperately needing about 250 more. I think that's where we're at right now, subscribers, for that to be a monetized station. Not that, we get more than $10 a month, but $10 a month leads to $20 a month, and, we're trying to grow an audience. So if you haven't, please go over to Junior Hockey Advisor and the YouTube page. You can get there through our Facebook pages, or you can go straight to YouTube. Okay, let's see where we're at here. I know we got some of these that are going to be quick ones. BCHL NAHL, take that one on. Mike, this is your go-to. Every time this question comes up every other week, we hand it off to you.
Yeah.
And then I just go take a cigarette break, even though I don't smoke. Okay. Oh, do I got to put the timer up for you?
Sure, if you want.
Okay. There you go. Timer is on. Make this a minute or less. Let's see if you can do it.
Well, yeah, that'd be tough. But, when it comes to player ability, both leagues are pretty dead on, comparable as far as like the caliber of player, which is why when Jeff was talking earlier, when we're scouting kids that are playing in the BC League, in most cases, we are first scouting them to play in the North American League. And then they chose to play in the BC League. The leagues themselves are different in the style of play. The BC is very much about speed and skill. At least that's what they're trying to kind of emulate. They call it more of the modern hockey, and kind of try to play that. The North American League is more old school, like clutching and grabbing type of deal. But the reality is, there is a lot of structure. There's less space and there's bigger bodies and things like that. So, both leagues are going to promote kids into similar areas of college, similar type teams. But the BC League does have a little bit less physical play. It's geared a little bit more to the smaller, more skilled player. And the North American League is still a little bit more geared towards I won't say less skilled, but it's more of the players that are interested in playing that more heavier style, tight check type deal.
Awesome. 1 minute and 30 seconds. Not bad. Not bad. Good answer. Yeah, Mike's absolutely right on that. Good question across the board. I don't think I need to add anything to it. Let's jump on and get a couple other questions here. This one's going to be easy. Junie, is it true the NAHL is looking to expand to Watertown and South Dakota? I do believe when you ask is you could stop that question right in halfway through the question. There is the NAHL looking to expand. I think you always have to say yes. I don't think that the NAHL has ever stopped looking to expand. This league 20 years ago was an 11-team league, and it's now next year it'll be over 30 teams, 30 or more teams. So have I heard anything specifically about Watertown? No, but I would not rule out the possibility. Mike, have you heard anything, or is there anything to add there?
No.
And usually when we hear something, we'll go, I don't know, maybe not, and we kind of give you a little like there's something there. But I haven't heard anything yet on that. If we do, we'll come on a broadcast in a couple weeks and we'll go, well, maybe or maybe not. They're going to see something in South Dakota. Right now, I don't know if there's anything going on there. But if we know, we'll be glad to tell you. Mike, take this one. What is your opinion on EHL versus NA3? Which is better, especially in regards to NCAA advancement / scouting? And thank you. Well, Vix, thank you so much for saying thank you.
I think when it comes to looking for Division III opportunities, we've talked about it in the past. We even had the commissioner of the Eastern Hockey League come on and kind of talk about what their mentality is. If that's the level you're looking for, the EHL, I personally feel like when you talk about the league itself, is more conducive to getting players to that level. Now, there's definitely programs in the NA3 that can do equally as good of a job, if not better, to move players into Division III. But if you're talking about the whole league and the opportunity that whole league provides, your chance of getting a Division I scholarship is higher playing in
Division
the
III.
EHL.
Division III scholarship, yeah. You definitely get a chance to move there. Okay, next question. CJHL compared to Tier 2 here in the States. That's a pretty easy one. CJHL is 9 leagues, so BCHL is no longer a part of that. So now you've got some leagues on the very bottom that just don't get scouted. They don't get looked at. In fact, tonight, what our original topic was going to be is talking about some of the leagues in the CJHL, like the Maritime, the Quebec League, the SIJHL. They really are not relevant to people looking to move up the ladder into college hockey. So, there's 9 teams there. You can take 3 right off because they just, the Maritime, the Quebec League, and the SIJHL are not relevant statistically to moving players. There'll be a couple Americans in each one of those leagues that move on to play some level of D3, but it's very, very few. You'll get more out of the SIJHL than you do the other 2 leagues. Now, nothing against the Quebec League. There's some really good hockey players up in the Quebec. There's a couple good players that play into the SIJHL. Maritime, in fact, somebody just said, I watch a lot of Maritime hockey. That's great. It's just not a scouted league. It's a very difficult league to scout. It's a very difficult league to pull players out of for American teams, especially D3 that runs on a limited travel budget. So, on the top end, easy to do. Production-wise, Tier 2, there's only really one Tier 2 league in the United States. That's the NAHL. And there's a league, the NCDC, which has its purpose in place. It's a good league, but it's not the same level as the NAHL. The NAHL pumps out hundreds of D1 committed players and hundreds of D3 committed players, and it's a big league. There's no doubt where if you're looking to move through, you'll get a lot of players. When I say a lot, you'll get a handful of players out of the OJ, the CCHL, the AJ, the Maritime, not the Maritime, Manitoba and Saskatchewan. Those leagues will put a limited amount of players. We looked at them earlier. They've all, the NAHL list was this long, can't see my hands, this long, and each of those leagues respectively were this long, with the OJ being a little bit bigger. That's the statistical way to handle things. Like this. I don't need to show you a bunch of fancy graphs. I'll just show you my hands. It works much better. So anything to add to that, Mike?
When you talk Tier 2, it's really the North American League and it's the BC League. Because again, the opportunities that come out of those two leagues are comparable. The level of player is comparable. The BC might have some higher end players that are going to be drafted into the NHL and things like that definitely can prop up the top players in that league. But the meat of that league and the meat of the NAHL are going to be comparable type players as far as like the Division I opportunities that they get. The AJ, maybe, you're getting in there with some of the top programs there, but as a league overall, and then it's the NCDC and everything else kind of falls under, maybe like Tier 2.5.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, last one. Can I take this one, Mike? Please, can I take this one? You read it.
It's so long, I got to be able to read it first.
Are you going to read it?
Yeah, I'm reading it.
Okay, I guess you don't read aloud. What are your thoughts about the NAHL? Let me get back up here again. What are your thoughts about the NAHL being watered down as it expands teams? That term gets thrown around a lot, but the statistics regarding NCAA commits from the NAHL remain strong. It absolutely does remain strong, and it's probably stronger now than it's ever been. Like I said, it's not. This league is, a decade ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, this was a small league. This league had a footprint of 11 teams. And remember, one of those teams that used to be the National Development Program played in the NAHL did not play in the USHL. So rightfully so, the National Development Program moved over to the USHL, where I believe it firmly needs to be. I think within a few years, it's become a juggernaut of talent there. So there's a lot of things. Remember, the NAHL expanded to fill voids. The NAHL had no presence at all on the East Coast of the United States, 6-10 years ago. I mean, literally, that whole area is built up. Your Danburys, your Maines, your New Jersey New Jersey Rockets. No, not Rockets. New Jersey Titans and your Northeast Generals. All those programs didn't exist. Okay, they weren't there. The EJHL was the firm base of talent for players on the East Coast. If you did not go to the USHL and you're an East Coast player, you didn't have to seek out the NAHL to go play in the NAHL. The NAHL didn't have that many teams in the first place to meet that demand. The EJHL was the Division I de facto, and it's still the same players, but they're in the NCDC now. They were there. It was the Junior Bruins. It was the Hitmen. Well, very strategic move by the NAHL. They started off moving into the East. They moved into Johnstown. They moved into Jamestown. They moved in just Wilkes-Barre. They started creeping over, and boom, they filled the void for players looking to move into D1. Doesn't mean that the NCDC doesn't have D1 players, but for fresh commits, when I mean fresh commits, if you come into the team without a D1 commitment, by the end of the year you pick up a commitment, that's a fresh commit, not a commitment I had in my back pocket from U16. For that situation alone, the NAHL crushes the East Coast now and does an extremely good job of placement. It is the number one league to play in on the East Coast because there's no USHL there. You want to play at the top level, the best level you can play on the East Coast of the United States now, it's there. So is it watered down? You could answer that a couple different ways. Remember, we all thought the growth of Division I college hockey, we all thought the growth of NCAA hockey was going to be Division I, and then more fanning out Division III. And it's happened just the opposite way. We've seen more Division III opportunities open up, and we've seen a steady maintenance of around 60 to 63 teams at the Division I level. That number hasn't expanded to 70 or 80 over the last few years. Everybody was expecting that we were going to see Illinois come on board. We thought we were going to see Lindenwood come on faster. We thought we'd have Alabama, Huntsville, and the Alaskas solidified. We thought that remember, Robert Morris was going to drop out, or actually did shut down for a year. Did they shut down completely? I think they did for a year. We thought we were going to lose Robert Morris. All these programs the pandemic kind of threw all this into a loop. The league, the NCAA, did not expand at the same level that USA Hockey was growing. USA Hockey was growing youth over the last 10, 12, 14 years, and Division I didn't stay up. So the quality of players coming out of that don't make it into Division I out of the North American Hockey League, there's Division I talent that's playing Division III hockey. And why do you know that, and why can you say that? Why can I confidently say that? Is because I look at all the players that drop down for whatever reason from Division I teams when they drop onto the top Division III teams, and they fit in with the top third players. They don't necessarily always own that team. Now, there's some that drop down that they're clearly head and shoulders above, but most of them drop down and they fit into the top third of those best D3 teams with that best of the NAHL coming out into those D3 teams. So I can tell you right now, I say that without blinking, without even questioning the comment. Your top NAHL guys that don't make it into Division I is not because they're not Division I talent. There's no room for Division I, enough Division I players. So did the league overgrow? No, there's that many players out there that are good hockey players right now. You got to realize too, there's another thing that's happened here. That pandemic slowed down all that growth that we expected at Division I, because we thought we were going to have 2 or 3 more teams at Division I. But what it also did was it crushed the 2000s, 2001, and 2002 classes, because they gave all 4 years of players at Division I an extra year of eligibility. So now instead of having 5 years to play 4 years of college hockey, meaning you've got, when the clock starts, when you get to college, you've got 5 seasons to get 4 years of hockey in. Now all of a sudden they've got 5 seasons to get, or 6 seasons to get 5 years in. Every kid got an extra year of eligibility. So it pushed everybody back that was expecting to move on. So it's a travesty for the 2000s, 01s, 02s. They are getting the bad end of this. It is absolutely great for Division III hockey, because Division III hockey can't be stronger than it is now. It is absolutely strong, and you know why that is. The programs that are out there busting their butt to grow and find players, you get these coaches that are hungry, that are coming out of nowhere with powerhouse teams. There's a team out of Chicago, Mike, is it Aurora?
Aurora University.
There's a perfect example. Came out of nowhere, and now the quality of players they're bringing in, because there's excess talent out there. The aggressive schools, well, the traditional schools on the top of the NCAA Division III are still the powerhouses. But then all of a sudden you're seeing these names that weren't normally, juggernauts. They're jumping in there with that group. And if you're out there and you see these guys, it's the coaches that are extremely aggressive. So I know I answered a lot there, but the bottom line is the NAHL is replacing where players are coming from. They've consolidated players. There's no longer an EJ. The NCDC is not relevant to Division I development. There's a lot of Division I players there. Mike, where'd they come from? Midget prep school. Okay, they did not develop in the league. They came in carrying their Division I. Nothing wrong with that. I tell you all the time, I love some of those teams. The New Jersey Hitmen can play with anybody in the United States. They can play with anybody in North America. It's a good program. Well coached, well funded, great program. Just enough said on that. But the thing about the CCHL, the OJHL, their numbers have come down. The AJHL's numbers have come down. The better leagues in Canada, the Americans aren't going up there because there's choices here that statistically put them in a better spot to go. Now, a lot of guys will still go up and play in the AJ. They'll go to the BC. They'll go up and play in these other leagues. But they usually do it for 1 year to get themselves in a better situation to come back to the NAHL. And they come back and play 2 years in the NAHL after 1 year in those other leagues. The BC is a little bit of an exception. That's a league of destination. Mike, on Monday night we talk a lot about, is it a league of advancement or is it a league of destination? What are the leagues of destination? The USHL. You don't have to go anywhere else. You get there, you're destined. You go to the BCHL, you don't have to go anywhere else. You go to the NAHL, you don't have to go anywhere else, but you can still go to the USHL if an opportunity opens up. If I go play in if I'm American especially, and I go play in Saskatchewan, I might want to move into the NAHL if I can, because the odds of me moving on to high-level college hockey are much, much better by the exposure I get in the NAHL. So did they overexpand? I don't believe so. I just think that they concentrated great talent into one league. And I know that sounds like a homer, but the statistics back it up.
Yeah, I think if all of a sudden we see that, there's chunks of the roster that aren't moving on to anything other than college club or don't move on at all, then we've got players playing within the league that shouldn't belong, right? But that isn't the case. 80% of the kids playing in the North American League are still getting Division I scholarships. And, like we said before, the rest of those players, for the most part, are getting Division III unless they're choosing not to continue to play hockey in college, and that's their own decision. But the numbers bear out that if you're going to play in the North American League, you're going to get a Division I scholar, or you're going to get an NCAA scholarship, whether it's D1 or D3, or I should say commitment, not scholarship.
Commitment, yeah, not a scholarship. Okay, yeah. Last question of the night, folks. Junie wants to. She's been good with questions. I'm assuming Junie. Well, I'm not going to assign pronouns. I just became woke. That's a tough one. I'm not going to assign pronouns. I made an assumption there. I take that back. Junie could be, whatever Junie wants to be, male or female or non. So there's my woke answer for that. That does not feel comfortable talking woke for me. I will never do a woke statement again. Okay, anyway, Junie. And you do not have to tell us, Junie, what you are, because you are who you are. Okay? And we'll appreciate you for whatever you are. Answer the question, Mike.
That's tough. I'd like to say yes, but the difference between skill level in the USHL to the North American League it's pretty significant in some cases. Where a team that's in the North American League could have an advantage is if they have older players, because the USHL still is relatively young in some cases. So if you're just looking off talent for talent, the USHL team's going to be better. But, could an all team actually win a game or two? Yeah, they probably can, but it's because they're an older team. If they've got a team that's mostly in their final year and they're well coached and have good structure, yeah, they definitely can. But I don't like comparing leagues like that just because the talent disparity is a lot. It's different.
I'll help Mike out a little bit there. Here's the USHL, and this is this year. I want you to look over in that far right column right here. If you can see it, I'll expand it up a little bit, and I'll move it over. That far column is the average age right now, today. So you notice across the board, Youngstown is still below 18. The National Development Program is just above 17. But most of these teams are young 18-year-olds, meaning they're still not in, they're not 18 and a half yet, with the exception of Fargo Force. This team the Chicago Steel is only 18 years old on average. Okay, so let's take and look at the NAHL doing the same thing in the NAHL, just to give you an idea of the difference in age. So once again, 18 and a half is an old team in this league, in the USHL, but there's teams, the National Development Team is literally just 17 on average. Now, if I go down and do the same thing and look at the North American Hockey League, whoa, right off the bat, if I can scoot that over a little bit, I can't. So it's right above my head, that column right above my head. Aberdeen, 19, 19.3, 19.43. One team still, almost 19, 18 and a half there, almost 19, 19.33. these teams across the board easily average over 19 years old as a league. Now, I'll give you an example of the difference in talent. You can take the National Development Program. They'll play a college schedule. They did this year. And I believe they had a winning record on their college games. Mike, you might be able to clarify that. That's clearly the testament to the talent. The talent's so good they can overcome youth because those teams are just full of talent. So they can play an NCAA Division I team and beat them. On average, the only advantage the NAHL has to a USHL team is age and size, if they're bigger and stronger because they're a couple years older. And I don't know if that's enough to say, to speculate that they can win the majority of the games they played. Yeah, they can beat a team here or there. But if they played 10 times, I think that the USHL is going to win the majority of 10 games, even the weaker teams in the USHL. Now, that's just from knowing the rosters and knowing the players. And I think Mike agrees with that, but it's not a situation where you can take a team and say, this team is, what's one of the best teams in the last 5-6 years in the NAHL? It's Lone Star. But if you look at where Lone Star, who puts a ton of players in Division I, they're not putting the players onto a lot of USHL rosters. They're older, stronger kids that never went to the USHL. There's always a couple kids on the team that have USHL experience, but it's not like there's a bandwidth of the top third where USHL guys that drop down. Those guys are rare, and when they drop down, they're not always. It's not always a hit when a USHL guy drops down to the NAHL. They can blend into the crowd real quick. They can be disgruntled and already got their mind on leaving hockey because the USHL thing didn't work out. Maybe it takes them 10, 15, 20 games to get their head back to where it needs to be productive. But it's a USHL guy coming back to the NAHL isn't always a good example of how close they are. Because the reason I'm bringing this up is you'll say, oh, but the 10 guys that dropped down from the USHL, they weren't the top players in their team. So therefore, the top in NAHL guys must be better than the bottom end USHL guys. I'd say it's a draw at best. It's not. I don't think you can say that. There's too much mental things going on with a drop down player. It's always much more aggressive to go up and to prove yourself than it is to come down and to prove yourself. Your mind plays tricks with you. But the answer to the question across the board is that I think that the leagues are appropriately placed for a reason, and the talent is too.
Yep.
So thank you, Junie, and just those that need to know. Not that we care either way, but Junie, now I know. I will not make that mistake again. I appreciate you being on. Mike, anything to wrap up with?
No, the one thing I was going to share that I forgot to at the time, the one thing that the NA3 did for their prospects that I thought was a pretty cool touch was because they have 5 divisions, that 6th team was a team of their midget U18 NAPHL All-Stars, and many of those kids were NAHL tenders, not NA3 tenders. They were NAHL tenders. So they put a team together just to have that 6th team and give those kids the opportunity to play against the NA3 teams. And, they held themselves pretty well in that weekend. The games were close, but it is also a little bit of a testament to how good the NA3 is for a lot of these players that, that NAPHL All-Star team didn't win any of their games, and they're all AAA kids that, came together for that weekend. So, I thought that was a pretty cool touch that they are giving those kids that opportunity.
Very good. Hey, there was a comment I want to leave on. Frank has become our number one cheerleader lately. He's on a lot of our broadcasts, not only interacting, which we appreciate, Frank, but he's also a cheerleader. Hey, folks out there, if you want to invite groups, if you want us to put out a video inviting groups, a team group, we'll put a video together inviting them onto the podcast to listen. Everything's archived. We can help you put together some of our better archive shows that can you can use as a package to work with your parents. We're not going to go back and edit a bunch of things specifically for your team, but we could put videos together that are content together for you that you could email the teams. We'd love to grow the audience, and if you want us to, present some stuff to your league, to your team, let us know. DM us, and we'd be glad to talk about doing that for you. Once again, if you haven't liked and subscribed to our YouTube channel, please jump on there. Facebook, you can go to Junior Hockey Live Facebook. Like us there, follow us there, and Junior Hockey Advisor. We always love to have you in the discussion group, which has already added another 100 people since we just hit our milestone this last few days of 8,000 people in that group. So love to see it. Love to see. What's that?
I said, including me.
Yeah.
You guys all got me back onto Facebook. I haven't been on Facebook in over 2 years, but since most of the interaction seems to happen there, I jump back in.
Well, thank you so much, folks. We appreciate you being on. Remember, Monday, unless some major news comes in, then we'll come on with some major news and gladly discuss that with you. But until then, we'll see you next Monday, and we'll be discussing a little bit of the same stuff we talked about tonight, but more about how to plan, how to work as a parent, how to get to the next level as a player and as a parent. And maybe we'll have some fun on Monday night too. So take care, folks. Have a great night.
Have a good night, everyone.